Let's confront the obvious. Chelsea are WSL champions. If you've been living under a rock for the past pretty much all season, then you wouldn't have known that. But it was pretty much determined from, I'd say, about October. On a random Wednesday night at Leigh Sports Village, Chelsea won their 6th consecutive WSL title with 2 games to spare. Their 1-0 victory over United and with Arsenal's shock 5-2 hammering with Aston Villa. Is it a shock anymore? Sealed the deal. This was the first time in 5 seasons the title race has not been decided on the final day. Did we expect that this was going to be the game the title was wrapped up in? It kind of felt a touch inevitable, if I'm honest.
I think initially when I was looking at the fixtures, I thought, oh my God, Chelsea could win this again against United. I think they've done that like 3 times. Last year at Old Trafford. Then there was the previous year where Sam Kerr, I think it was, scored that outrageous goal for them to win it. I think they won 3-2 or 4-2, maybe. I might be wrong. But I was just like, imagine that happening again at United. Then we saw how the fixtures came out and we were like, okay, maybe this will go on for another week. Like Arsenal had one job, to make this kind of go on a little bit more, to allow, maybe a little bit more fanfare around it if it happened at a weekend. But no, it happened on a Wednesday evening in Leigh. And it just felt a bit like, meh. And actually, Chloe's not going to say it, but well done, Chelsea.
Nice,
new manager, a lot of new players in, like things maybe not fully clicked yet. So to still be unbeaten and to actually manage to win it in that fashion with games to spare is very impressive.
I mean, it is ridiculous. We're going to touch on the unbeaten record in a second, but let's reflect on their first season under Sonia Bonpastor. She's become the first manager to win the title in their first season, excluding the inaugural WSL season, of course. What do we think that she's done? How do we think that she's done? She already had a winning formula. It wasn't like she came in, had to revamp the squad and change loads of things, because it was already a winning machine. But it does feel like, looking at some of Chelsea's performances, they have stepped up to another level again. And obviously some of the players that have been brought in, some of the youngsters that are now coming through and starting to feel more confident. I mean, Sonia's done an incredible job in literally a seamless takeover from Hayes. We didn't know where Chelsea were going to go from Hayes, but they've stepped up again. It's gear 7.
Yeah, I agree and disagree. I think she did have to make a few changes. Yes, there was a winning formula there, but I don't think it was as simple as just taking over the reins and doing what was being done in the past.
Same as usual, girls.
I think there was different players came in that had to adapt as well. I don't think we've seen fully exactly what Sonia wants to do with this squad. I think relationships are still being built. Some players maybe still finding their feet in the WSL, which makes the win, for me, more impressive, because I don't think they've reached another gear. I think they have another gear to reach.
I don't think they've reached capacity. I do think they've stepped up since last season.
Interesting, because I think that there's been quite a few
inconsistent games.
Yes, and what I think is really interesting is that I think they actually won the league because of their start. I think their start was so important. When you look back at the first half of the season, they scored 31 goals, conceded 6. And then in the second half of the season, they scored 23 goals and conceded 7. Mm-hmm. So they actually bought themselves the ability to have a bad day at the office in the second half, because 2 of their 3 draws came in the second half of the season. Of the games where they won in the last kind of injury time, both of them came in the second half of the season. And I just think a bad day at the office for Chelsea is still a draw.
I think though, you have to look at the step up in terms of unbeaten so far, probably going to get an invincible season, bar Liverpool doing something really special, which is in the locker, which 100% is in the locker. Already picked up the Subway League Cup in the FA Cup final at the end of the month. Then also, I know the Champions League didn't go to plan, but that kind of felt like their bogeyman in a way. It was kind of a little bit like, well, hopefully they do it, but maybe they don't. And I think when you look at the fact they've wrapped up the season 2 weeks before the end already, which also buys them a lot more time to go into that cup final, I think that to me definitely signals a step up.
Yeah.
That's what I'd say. But I have to agree with you. There has definitely been some inconsistent moments, but I think that's to be expected for any squad at any level.
Exactly. And I think
Barca Man City, that game, where were Barca? But it's like those slip-up games are always going to happen.
But I also think those moments fly under the radar when you're winning, and those like hiccups or, difficult moments or things that aren't going right that are to be expected from a new manager with new players in the squad will fly under the radar when you're winning. And, we've seen that in games. We've seen them get it wrong tactically. not very often, but more in the games in Europe, say Barcelona or that Man City game. So I think it's been incredibly impressive that they've done it this way. And I also think other teams have fumbled the ball a little bit as well this season. But I think the way that they were able to win that game, once Arsenal lost, I was like, right, they're going to do it. I don't know whether it's a draw, whether it's a win, I think they're going to do it. Watching the game, I thought United were going to win it, actually, because I thought United were better and played well and maybe created more. And also you have to factor in the mental side of it. And I know I bang on about it every season.
Go on.
And I think the whole mentality monster thing is as overused this season as, well, that's what champions do,
like
which I've heard 100 times.
Who's put out the mentality
phrase,
monster
100%,
phrase. Yeah, that's
100%.
come from you.
But what I was going to say is the phrase that's been overused this season is, that's Chelsea. That's what the champions do.
That's the winning way.
I've heard it like every week, and I use mentality monsters as much. But I actually think when you look at Arsenal, when you look at Chelsea, both of them having both highs and lows, arguably in the Champions League, the highest of highs, the lowest of lows, how you bounce back from that. And the mental side of the game is such a massive part of that. For Chelsea to be able to get battered in the way that they did, go into a game with maybe not loads of pressure, but the pressure that you know if you win it or draw, you win the league, after coming off such a difficult week, to go in, not really play well, be up against Man United who are playing well, and still do it. Conversely, you look at Arsenal who fell apart like a wet cake against Aston Villa, which maybe you could have put down to their head still being in Lyon, but then to back it up with the performance against Brighton, that's where I think one of the biggest winning points of Chelsea is compared to the other teams is, yes, they've got money and depth, etc., and quality, but actually I think their mentality is the thing that gets them over the line so often, and it's such a hard thing to build, and that's what legacy is, I guess, is that legacy of winning and that legacy of that mentality.
Well, it's definitely clear where their intention is this season. So after scoring the winner against United, Bron said, we want to be unbeaten for the whole season. So if they beat Liverpool this weekend, they'll become the first team to have completed an invincible season twice, having gone 18 games unbeaten in 2017-18. Do we think there's going to be an absolute shed ton of pressure going into this last game? So they'll also finish on 60 points if they win and overtake the 58 set by Emma Hayes' Chelsea in 2022-23 for the highest points total in WSL history. But they've only scored 55 goals. I say only scored 55 goals in 21 games this season. So unless they can score 7 against Liverpool, it will be their lowest goal tally since the COVID disrupted season when they scored 47. So, I mean, a disappointing season for Chelsea all round, really, when you look at it.
Really hard for me to predict how it'll go. Like, part of me is like, look, they've been unbeaten this season. They're probably going to go unbeaten. They're going to either draw or beat Liverpool. You know, they're at home. They're going to be picking up the trophy. They know they've won the league. I think what's really beneficial is having that extra thing to fight for. And look, they're too professional to put their feet up and think, right, league's done.
But do you rotate the team a little bit more to kind of rest them for the FA Cup?
I think we've seen a little bit of that already. In the last couple of games. So I do think they'll want to go unbeaten. It'll be interesting to see if Myra Ramirez is back. She went off, I think, against Manchester United. Looked really uncomfortable. So hopefully it's nothing too serious. But, you know, I think having that extra thing to be able to nail on at the end of this season will be really beneficial in this game, to just give them another thing to fight for, knowing that they've already won the league. But equally, you look at Liverpool, they could play like they did against Everton and not score any goals, or they could play like they did against Manchester United, be sat in their own defence for the first half and then get them on the counter and absolutely like blow them away. So Liverpool are inconsistent. You just don't really know what you're going to get.
Okay, so in terms of Liverpool's intentions going into this game, obviously, without a doubt, they're going to want to finish, you know, the highest position they possibly can. But if we look at sort of where they are in the table at the moment, so they're 6th place on 25 points, Brighton ahead of them on 28 points. Brighton have a goal difference of -4 and Liverpool have a goal difference of -14. So realistically, even if Liverpool pull it out of the bag, destroy Chelsea, they'd have to do it by at least 10 goals, and Brighton would have to lose against Aston Villa, which, to be honest, this game doesn't mean that much to Liverpool when you frame it that way.
Yeah, that's true. I still think it's fascinating that Brighton are still in 5th. They've won like 3 times this year in 2025, I think.
Well, I think it's like you said, like if you do damage in the first half of the season, you're pretty set. You've definitely avoided relegation and you pretty much guaranteed a spot in and around the sort of top level of the mid-section.
And now you're looking at teams who are finding form, but it's almost too late. You look at your Aston Villas, you look at your West Ham, suddenly things are starting to click and it's like, well, it's too late now, guys.
But next season. With 2 trophies down already, what do we make of their treble chances this season? So the FA Cup final between Chelsea and United takes place next Sunday at Wembo. The treble is well within sight, but United, this is their time to shine.
It is well within their reach, absolutely, and would be an unbelievable. Do you know what though? Even if they don't win the FA Cup, it's still been an incredible season for Chelsea. But yes, the treble is well within their grasp. But I've been really impressed with United of late. Their performance against Chelsea, for example, how they played against Manchester City in the Manchester Derby, which we're going to get onto. They also have the experience of not only being in a final against Chelsea in the FA Cup, but they also have the experience of winning an FA Cup final, which I think will massively stand to them. They won't have that, like, it's of course a big game, but it's not like, oh my God, we've never beaten Chelsea, or oh my God, we've never won here in Wembley. They've got both of those things under their belts, and I think that's been a massive part of United's growth, is gaining experience, and then being able to lean on that when it matters. So it makes for a spicy game.
Well, they've obviously got the title. The FA Cup title is theirs. They're going to want to defend that. They are probably full of confidence after securing that Champions League spot. Mark Skinner absolutely loving life at the moment with his new lovely little contract deal. And the players, like you said, have been putting out some pretty spicy performances. So this is Man United's chance to end up with silverware this season. Whereas for Chelsea, already got 2 in the cabinet.
What's going to be interesting, though, is how they get on against Arsenal. And if they beat Arsenal, that's just another feather in their bow. Is that the phrase? I don't know. Nice. One of those kind of like, it's another thing to just like get their confidence up. So
and right now, it's a good time to strike against Arsenal.
It's going to make a really exciting final.